can't see outside. Now, there's a shadow line communication, right? So we all have to pay attention to travel lines. Can't see outside conditions, right? So, all right. So we just have to start connecting. Okay, so travel position line centers, all over the clock locations. Directing lines of panels, 3-point centers attractions, 3 division settings attraction locations, pi calculation lines of 2 track line conditions. Okay, directing lines calculations, all those modifications, center calculation of center position. Okay, now signal line communication clock lines, right, 0-24 line rotation centers, 3 main track locations. Directing lines communication, travel lines, both lanes, such lines of levels, and position of ground settings. 30 million line surface underground set locations. Arrow indicates settings and travel. Okay? All right. As you're going through service line screens, direct lines communication panels and 2 track lines and 1 line provision. Okay? Center calculation lines of triangulation and reset line conditions. Diamond core line shift line screen set locations. Put position lines of box line rotating centers in track location. Okay? Sets lines of 3 perimeters and 3 set locations settings and travel. Directing lines communication settings, all point centers, directing lines communication, center calculations, 0 gravity line settings, cell modification centers of travel. All right, so we come in position track lines. All right, so center line communication initiate, remember program locations, 30 million feet below, lines, ground lines, center surface, triangulation position, liquid formation screen. All right, there's the screen. All right, so we got 4 travels, 4 operations surface, triangulate position of program lines, and 3 set location of settings, all direct location of panel. All right, so that's done through line screens. All right. Okay, so you feel the temperature readings, all calculations, 1 signature path, cross line symbols, and direct signal locations. 1 indicates 1 position of panel, 3 lines of pi, and direct signal. Okay, modificates line calculation setting position. Flywheel, infinity line rotation surface triangulation. Now, directing communication lines, ground settings. Okay, so we take the 30 million track center high positions, liquid formations, and center calculations. Point track lines, high calculation, stream location. Okay, liquid formations. So it's got an alpha line, delta, and a mega line screen set location. Okay, look at that, disappeared. It says lines of communication travel lines. Okay, now direct line calculation lines, 0, 0, 3, 0 track locations, 1 measure, 1, 2 positions of programs. Okay, pi position track lines, point centers, and cell modifications. Direct communication of flywheels. This comes into towers of communications and travel calculation. Right? Direct communication lines in track locations and computer framing and direct signals and set locations. See the intelligence inside line conditions? Here it is. See the solar graph come in? There's the intelligence. Okay, now the center position line calculation is 0 gravity lines, tracking communications, box center position travel lines, and set locations. Okay. Very powerful stuff. So we set up a 30 trillion center, set lines of years, 30 million line rotation centers of travel, and point centers location system and calculation. Complicated stuff, right? All right. So we go through the coloration, we go through security lines of point centers, and 3 calculations of direct location settings of travel. Okay. Direct lines of inner cores, travel lines, high position molecules of design. 3 center calculations of box centers. And security panels, center position location of center calculation. Okay. Now, stay in the same frame. Direct location lines, we go into purple communications. So we overcross the signals and direct lines of sonar. This puts mechanism high force lines of travel in calculation setting and position location of operation. Okay, done by equation. All right, so you guys in there, 30 minutes on track lines, the earth line rotation surface of travel. Point systems, line directions. 1 graph streams, 2 panels communication, 0. Sets line communications, all centers, all center line conditions, all travel calculation setting, all levels of operation. Okay. Directing communication lines, center line communications. 1x2000 is above line rotation surface. Speeds anomalies in 2 tracks line center line communication. All right. So it's line calculation ground settings. Okay. Walking the service on 2 panels of communication. Okay. So we split the anomalies in 2 panels and 4 track locations. Right. Side line angles. Same lines of 2 tracks. 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. All 0 lines communication, right? Platform calculations of 0 lines of tracks, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 set locations. All right, panel communication lines, blocking centers, cubicle streams, test circuit lines of channels at 3 set location settings. Now, direct line communication crosses line stream, panel communication lines in opposite high calculation stream location high setting. Cubicle streams, position of track lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 set locations. Okay. Now we open the panels, so we're coming to Stargate line screen. Directing lines, communication lines of 30 trillion line centers, and position location of point centers of travel. Okay, very complicated stuff. All right. Center calculations of data lines on the highway, interlines, interface, interception set location, top line signal. Panel communications comes in the green line position 1 center and track location of 0 operation. Travel calculation line crosses stream line settings, sets a 45-degree angle split in position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 travels in communication. Directing line calculation setting in position 9, 10, 11, and 12 set locations. Cross lines and line rotation centers. All right. 0 gravity security line divisions. So the 0 tracks sets lines of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 perimeters and line setting and travel. Directing communication line centers, high position location center. Operate the server location system and track locations. Okay, double vision. Okay. So wherever you are in the coloration screen settings, your cells are coming in telecommunication waves. This is where we come to security lines of tele. Okay, and line connections equals lines of compute system, perception, line connections of AI. So it's travel and position, it's operation. Now, directing communication line settings, as you guys are in a waiting signal. We go line position locations, X lines initiate, high calculations, run program. Runs lines of simulator line position locations across the stream and point centers of travel and position its operation. Now we take the energy lines, the perceptions calculations, 0, 0, 1 line track location. Position lines, compute centers, equal line communication, what's above, what's below, no more separation of center calculation. Test arc tetrahedron and modification line screens, setting lines of 2 track location, right? So we take the levels of communication, perceptions over program mode, locations AI, and 2 track line settings. Modification system, travel position, location, operation line settings, and travel communication. Okay. Detect the lines of telewaving, telecommunicating, telegraphing, energy line, stream interference, and the 4 track line connections. X2000 comes in and center calculations, left wing, right? Detect the lines calculation, high interference, coloration pass, blue central communication centers of travel. Okay, direct lines, communication lines, and 1 center communication center. All right, so we bring the high sequence pattern and position your test for extremes and set locations. Directing lines of anomalies at line condition. Dummy equation. Okay, so as you guys are servicing line streams, you're coming in high calculation through all levels into dimensional screen setting. Okay, exactly what's going through the files. Communication lines, computer realms, telegraphing, telecommunication. Okay, so the vortices line interference change communication lines at high calculation to its zero amplification of channeling. This is the oscillologic communications of box centers of travel calculations, point centers of test arc communication. Directing lines of cells, modify your line interference of travel calculation setting of streams. Box centers and position line calculation setting to all levels of cubicle set location. Okay, 1, 2, 3. You guys are there. Have fun. All right, 30 minutes on the track. All right, so in provision, you go through your files of communication. It's all throughout set locations. Now, we change the graph settings. 1 setting, 2 track lines with 2 line rotation centers. Now we go in modification of coloration of change. 1 line signature, 0 track line position, 0 calculations. 1 line signature, 0 position line operation, 0 calculations. 0 position line centers, and 0 calculation position of programs. Directing communication lines, high calculations, track lines, high position line connection, high position of formation. Directing lines of panels, okay. Black hole line rotators, line connection, center communication. Directing lines, position of files. Sets lines of track lines. One position, and 2 tracks, 3 tracks, 4 tracks, 5 tracks, 6 and 7 and 8 line connections. Okay. Graph calculation of sun, protecting all line rotation surface in the file room and position programs and face recognition. Done by equation. All right. Okay, so in the center line position locations, we come in all calculations of honeycomb and direct signals. Okay. Modification lines cross streams at 1 position, 2, 3, 4, and 5 set locations. Okay, crossing line screens into 6, 7, and 8 in cell modification. Now this triangulates the point centers in a 45 opposite angle and line position of travel calculations. Directing calculation lines, all clock lines, 2 track lines high position, 2 line settings in position location of glow and graph center, clock line division center position its operation surface, and retriangulate position of programs to set location. Okay, done my equation. All right. So the metric meters and scales, centerline communication setting sets up a program. Sets direct location, triangulation, reset position of center lines of 0 operation. Now, track line calculation, timestamps, line position location to a colossal calculation stream and position of center calculation. Okay? Direct lines of tubing, sets position of its operation surface, triangulate position of program set locations. Done by equation. All right? There's a reason why I set these things up for you guys in a certain time sequence. All right, so we get modification lines into all levels. Symbolism, line interference, location of Android settings and travel. Satellite connections. Okay. Setting direct signals, point centers in position of ground settings. Platform communication of center communications. Right. Platforms, line centers at 3 track locations. Okay. So adding angle points into all line centers in position at certain lines of change in direction. Changing position locations to center calculations. Realms and modification of center and line connection. Okay, done by equation, right? So frequency line communication of sonars, traffic calculation line interference and position location of 3 lines of clocking. Okay, 6 lines of equal lines, 3 lines of 6 lines high position location, line communication ground settings, 3 travel calculation lines, clock line high position of travels. The point system of tracks, high positions travel calculations. From the white line centers in set locations. Triangulation resets. Sets lines into box line rotators. Point centers and track locations in position. All right. Now, in that position line calculation setting, we change the 0 calculation surface. This relines its transformer lines of cells in a higher calculation stream in high position locations calculation. All right. Done by equation. Changing the modifiers line centers. So we take the 3 tracks, 6 lines, and 9 line rotation surface. Travel calculation line interference. We change this locations all levels into white center calculations. 2 track lines of the sun and the moon protects the center lines of travel calculation line centers at point divisions in set location line centers high position. Okay, done by equation. Okay, so overlapping sequence lines of stream settings. 3 communication settings and travels. Directing lines of position of panels into shaping communication lines into Gray's calculation. Okay. Now directing calculation line interference in position travels. Okay. 3 center calculations. All right. Realms of calculation line centers, point centers and track locations, center line communication and 3 line division. Okay. Overlapping sequence of panels and communication setting. So we take the 1 line signal in position of 1 center. Okay. Travel calculation line centers of 2 travel point centers of travel. Sets line communication at 1 setting in position location, cross line signals and set location. Okay. Directing the calculation lines of cell modification lines, stream interference, and direct signal to set location. Right? Modificate line centers high position location to 0 calculations of face recognition. See? Face recognition. See? Sets lines of communication. There it is. Done by equation. Okay. It's all done. All right. So it's important to understand why I keep doing instructional line division, because it brings you back an equation. That's why you have your pass settings. But the pass is the provision of the existence that opens all signals and modification, all set location, highline settings. All right. So the oscillologic subcoloration of T receptor line screen. Now, Each cell has set lines and triangulation line settings. So each box on the center line rotation sets lines of communications. Let's go through the black line rotation centers of triangulation. Point systems into block line rotation center. Travel calculation lines of point centers of zero gravity. Travel position location of zero settings, zero position, and zero calculation. 4 track locations, right? Point lines, crosses line streams, and point centers in line calculation setting. Travel position location of pi in line rotation surface. Now, directing communication lines of zero calculations, zero position, and zero track lines across line stream. Puts position locations into line settings of face recognition time setting to its operation surface. Dumb equation. Okay. So it's all about face recognition line settings, location of cell lines, stream location centers of travel. Now, we take the position location of the Glasarian streams in direction. Okay. Set a position location of center communication of point centers and dot. See the dot in the center? Change the coloration of lines, center location of solid graph lines into white signals, position of program setting, position of its operation. Point tracks sets lines of communication, triangulation, reset position of programs. Okay. Modify the point line centers. Point track, 3-line position programs, directions. All right, so modification line streams. Now we come into security lines of one signal in position of travel. Okay. Indicates triangulation line position locations to its diamond core and set location. All right. Now, modifies 3 lines of angles in 3 set locations. Okay. Direct line calculations of the sun, positions of the moon. So it's line communication setting programs in center calculation lines of face recognition of time sequence. Dumb equation. All right. So the Glasarians are in setting, clocking line sins. Center calculation lines of point centers of track location. Now, indirect line calculation of Glasarians come into triangulation reset position programs at 3 centers. Direct line communication lines, center calculation, point lines of track lines, earth core in center line position to its operation. Okay, done by equation. So I'm just adding frames to all center calculations. Setting direct signals, modification line centers of circulating interference, changes point lines of tracks. Now directing lines of position location of its program is center calculation of sonar and set location. Directing line position location of point tracks. Now we set up a white line circle and 2 lines of communication, point centers, and 3 track location, right? Adding the equations, center line split and center position. Point center and point center lines, box, rotation, surface, and triangulation. All right, so that's position line calculation of 3 lines of communication of setting and travel. Okay, so point centers, Fibonacci line in position location of center communication, right? Center lines calculation line interference in 2 tracks, 3s, and 4 lines of measure and set location. Direct calculation of the sun and the moon comes in position location of all lines in line communications of face recognition and time sequence of pi. Done by equation. All right. So I'm just adding face recognition to each structure lines to your cells. Clock line change, 24 equals lines of 24, 24 times lines of 12, 24 line interference, flux glass communication 36, 36 equals line of 12 over pi position travel. 40 line provisions, 12 line cycles, high calculated line settings is 60,000 line meters and set location. Clock line divisions, point system, 2 travel calculations, right? Directing lines panels, 1 position, 2 tracks, 3 positions to 4 tracks, set location. Now, calculating line position, all lines of 2 track line settings. Okay, direct communication lines, the crossing line and position locations of bounce position travel. Sets lines communication cross line centers in a 3-line split. Sets line communication and triangulation reset position programs set location. Done by equation. Skynet line settings is all calculation cell modifications now in center. Skynet high position programs. All right, done by equation by clockings. Okay, so triangulation resets, splits anomalies in travel calculation of point lines of track location. Remember the cerebro? All right. Sets lines of communication, black line rotation surface, point lines of track. 3 lines of measure. Okay. Triangulation resets, diamond core line centers of travel, point systems, calculation setting, TV box lines, and box line rotation. Okay. So repositions its value in line connections. Okay. Center calculation line interference in position location all levels to another position location of face recognition. Done by equation. All right. Cerebral cortex lines of stream, directing lines position of panels. sets lines of communication and graph calculations. So this is what happens when you get understanding communication line centers that come in memory line. You come in and correlate high position locations to a high calculation setting and stream interference that puts you in a higher position of travels, which you come into out of co-creation to creation to new things, setting line position and graph calculations. So as soon as I add, I change. So it's in the position of the past, but the past is the existence of the now. So triangulation of point centers in direct signal, the two track locations, right? And triangulation point centers in position of point locations in point lines of direction and center calculation. Okay. Adding spot channels, directing lines of position, location of programs, and center calculation. All right. Now we add the sequence lines and numbers in a green line cycle, 3-line communications, 4 lines of track, 7-line divisions, 8 lines of center. Sets communications of 3 tracks, communication of 2, 1-line division, and 0 calculations. Done by equation. All right. So in that track lines, you really understand how to modify all this and really get in position locations, what framing is in track locations, high levels of channels, and direct signals, going through modification line screens and sublocations. All right. Rounds of calculation lines is security, panel calculation lines is 0, and line rotation centers and position of travel calculations. Okay. Now, directing lines of communication lines comes in the gold line cycle, sets communications and separation of 3 tracks and set location. Okay. Modification lines of triangulation, reset, position programs, and timeline sequence. Okay. Box centers and position locations, ground setting, line operation, surface, and triangulation. Okay. Sets with point lines in 3 tracks, 4 and 5-line rotation of center. Okay. Done by equation. So know exactly why you have the provision cycles and high calculation stream locations. Now, directing lines of communication lines. There's a reason why I come into coloration line screens, because you have to understand the matrix settings and high calculation stream interference. So illuminate the graphics and position travels. This is the earthline communications. Directing lines of center, realms, portals, communication stream lines, high calculation, right? Colorations of change and center calculations, point center. Now, direct lines of panels. We go into all line surface, black communications. Lacing lines of platforms, 1 position, 2 tracks, 3 positions, 4 tracks, 5-line settings in position to pi, and a dimensional door screen and set positions operation. Done by equation. Now, getting coloration lines and calculation line interference to securities, platforms of U, travels line position travel calculations, point systems of 1, point systems of 2, point systems of 3, point systems of 4, and point systems of 5, going through the dimensional door and security line divisions and 4 track locations. Okay. All right, done by equation. So as soon as you add color, it changes everything. The modification line of your cells has to be in a certain sequence of line communications. Pro-location line centers and traffic calculation. All right. So in that line settings, we change the correlations of panels. And we go through the liquid formation screen set into earth lines. This is infinity 8-line rotation and center calculations. So we got 3-line provisions of XT thousands and cycline. Okay, cyclone communication lines of information panel communication. Okay, setting track communications at point centers of phase recognition time sequence, all levels of track location. Okay, done by equation. So that's all it is. Phase recognition at each cell. But as a triangulation line interference, we use line location of 24 million lines of cells in 1 second. Setting line like kind of high interference and position location measure correlations to settings of panels, phase recognition time sequence. As soon as you add color, it changes everything in modification lines, the screen lines, high position. Okay, screen lines and high position are realms, and set position of travel calculation. The point line centers is center position to calculation stream location. Okay, center calculation of security lines. Direct lines communication of flywheel, high positions program. Done by equation. So adding the coloration path to all position travel lines is all levels of point line conditions to calculation. Right? Directing calculation line centers of point centers of track locations. Blue line cycles and position of 3 tracks. Triangulation line lines, high center interference molecule design. Factors over pi, calculation line centers of box centers, right? To the box. So we go through blue cycle line connection of change position of center calculation, right? Direct calculation line interference of 2 tracks, 3 tracks, 4, and 5-line provision. Blocking sequence. blue line cycles in a dimensional line, a rail communication setting in a compute system of track calculations, right? That makes equation. So 2 track lines of pi, center communication lines of cycle line, calculate high position location programs set location. Platforms communicate C, solar graph calculations. Green line cycles, center calculation. Indirect state location of panels. Point settings of 3 track line conditions. Point line centers into magnetic high wave information lines of center calculation data communication. That makes sense. So coming in computer alignments is travel calculation stream. Knowing exactly how to get into that same line calculation setting in position to its operation surface, in position of clock lines and dimension lines of scales, right? Scale communication. Directing lines all levels of black line cycles. Set lines of point system, and 3 travels in set location. Okay. 3 direct line conditions of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 set locations. Okay. Getting mechanized line interference in dimensional lines of a door in 3 centers of communication. Okay. Directing lines of door, directing lines of door, directing lines of door. Okay. In set location. All right. So all position of security line is now in defense line communication in cells. Cells are walking through cross screens. So the panel communication lines of 13 over track. It's 1 lines, 1300 set lines, position location of 13,000 string lines of 1 cycle. Triangulation line centers and point line centers equal line communications of bracket interference. Direct communication of program setting in position of 0 calculation line streams of set location. Okay, done by equation. So when you're adding the equation, your past is moving forward, but when it's moving forward, it's in position location of its existence, okay, which changes the frame of time, okay, but it stays in the center calculations of the now, all right. Getting sequence and set location of travel. Cubical line screen, set line connected line interference. So inline rotations, we add position of channels in 4 positions, okay. Sets lines, lacing lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 line communication. Okay, direct calculation line interference, cross line symbols, directs 1, 2, 3, and 4 set location. Sets cross lines 1, 2, 3 set connections. So 4 track lines over cross signals and 1, 2, 3, 4 the set position. Sets calculation of 1, 2, 3 lines and set locations. Location grid in position of traction in all levels of set location. All right. Walking signal in line connections of 3 travel calculations. Setting platforms and center calculations. When you set up the platforms, it's all communication in your cells that can walk the signal and test our communications in 4 and 5 in generation screens. Sets communication in 6, 7, and 8 location. All right, directing communication lines of 0, 0, 0, 0, uplines, uplinks, uproad, program, data processing, and communication setting, lacing lines, discord, and communication compute system of travel. Center calculation, location grid, sets position to its calculation stream location, and high calculation. Done by equation, guys. Very powerful now. See, solar direct signals. So sending communication lines is stream. Everything's in colors and path. Now the calculation stream interference comes all position of phase direction of timeline. Very powerful location of sapiens, high calculation of grays. So in that track lines, high center interference, we changed the program locations. We had a new line frame that had locations in 4 channels of communication of block centers. Position locations, 3 track line conditions, right? So crossing line symbols, direct lines communication of sun, and position locations in face recognition of timeline. Okay, now indirect line conditions, platform 1, platform 2, 3, 4, and 5 set locations. Okay, now that's in directions. Now we go in sequence lines of box line and 3 communication settings in your test communications of programs. 3 calculation lines of security panels and position of travel. Correlates high calculation line position of panel communications of block centers and travel communications. Security lines and measures and 12 line signals. Sets lines calculation high interference of 024, 048, 072. So line conditions of 1 over 5th equals line calculation of 21 equals 1 lines of 8th. 8th line communication line centers, equal line communication setting of 0, 0 calculation, equal line communication of stream and position operation. Done by equation lines of eighth, one line signature, two lines of track, one lines of fifth, and eighth line communication center calculation. Okay, see? Very powerful, isn't it? Now, if you look really close, you can see the face recognition time. Right there, face recognition. See? Boom. Done by equation. Okay, look at a profile view. So the calculation of your cell lines can move around now in circulation, rotation, centers of travel. Directing lines all communicate setting the programs. Now, this puts specification in your compute system. All of the communication lines, okay? Sets lines of M equals lines of calculation of metrics and location of memory and set location of travel. Compute lines, perceptions, set lines of AEI and distractions and position programs. 0, 0, 3 track line conditions of 1, 2, 3, 4 line positions, 3 line tracks, 7 and provision set location. Done by equation. All right, so setting up frame position of travel lines gets in a train modulation screen. Point lines, high position molecules, 3 track lines, 6, 0, 0. Okay, sets lines position location 9 and center. Okay, sets lines of 12, 12 lines, center line, position location, 6 over lines, C equals lines of 12, 12 equals lines of 12, line position 144, track location of 0 equals lines of 1 set location. Now, in direct line centers, we have to understand how to use the communication lines as center calculation of point centers. Communication line inference, 1 line signature, 2 track locations, right? Direct calculation of 9, position location of 0, position location of 1, and set location. Now, directing line. Lines of 6, 1 over pi, 2 over track, 1 line provision, and 2 track line conditions. Okay? Setting communication line inference into its solar sail in moon traction and position of bounds in line position its operation. Done by equation. Okay, so understand how the cell modification line screens and telecommunication, the code weaving, cobwebbing, interline, interlink, interposition, program location of paths. Now, direct calculation of point lines, direct communication of point centers of travel, calculation of 3 settings of travel. So inline calculation of 6, in position of 6, inline calculation of 5, and line condition of 3, in position of 4, and track location, right? 4 lines of measure, 3 lines of track, and 7 location settings of travel. Direct calculation line inference and 0 calculation line system, travel position of 0, travel line position of 0, travel line position location of center calculation. Point lines of track height interference and position location of setting. Data streams of point line tracks, 4 line communication settings, high positions calculation. Living line cycles, all of the travel records and timelines, direct location, fire and wiring, high rotation centers, and travel communication, high position test record position programs, center communication setting to its operation service set location. Done by equation. Metric meters in position of time center. Getting calculation all levels and set position of operation server locations. 4 track line settings, 3 lines of measure and set location. Okay, so inline rotations, 0 line communication of 1, 0, 0, line position of 1. So as I'm going calculation line inference, traveling so fast in calculation, 1 continuing line centers and 1 set locations. Setting position location all levels. 24 kilometers, line 1 second, line position of clock lines, 24 line rotation, 48 track, 72 provisions, and 144 and set positioners calculation. Okay? Direct lines calculation of 1 lines over pi sets line communication, travel position, right? Direct lines of 2, sets lines of 4, opposite line conditions of 1, 0 correlations, and 0 traction, high position program. Calculation line interference, 0 calculations, box line rotation surface. Calculation of all point lines of test record, new program, new activation stream location of 5 settings and direction. Done by equation. So the metric meters of the scale lines and stream interference and cell modification stream set location of travel lines is now in high calculation. All right. Point lines of track, molecular structure lines of 3 centers and 3 calculations on line centers. Sectors over 3 in position of 2 over 1 in set locations. High position line calculation of point lines, putting position location high centers of point line track. Direct lines of 0, sets position location of 0, sets line communication of 1 lines and 0 line position. 1 equals line decimal point line 0, 0, point lines of 1 location center of travel. Point lines of track, point lines of setting, and point lines of provision. 3 triangulation line inference x2000s. Direct line calculation center point lines, 1 direction, 2 direction, 3, and 4 line position travel. Calculation high variance, See equal line communication travel position location at point centers. Line calculation of point center, point center, point center, point center, travel communication of programs. Okay, in the opposite line interference in tracking communication setting and position. All right, direct calculation line location grid sets communication setting into all the force line communication of 4 track locations. Okay, now done by equation. Okay, so understanding the lacing grid lines, the flux capacitor line positional Y lines settings of 3 track locations and high settings to its operation. Okay, triangulation high interference, 3 lines of 6, location of 9. Okay, now it's got out of the equation screen. Right? So getting into cell modification triangulation lines of 24 trillion line cycles equals lines and lines at 1 point center into 1 line rotations, 0 point centers in position of traction. Okay, so as we come into 2 lines, 3 lines of communications, so it's 3 over 2. Okay, so when I say over lines, it's a cross line signal. Okay, overlapping. Box line rotation and triangulation reset position programs and position modification. So getting into triangulation lines. Okay, we open up a grid line circle. This rotates the surface, triangulation, position of programs, and all calculating line centers, position to space, direction, and time. Done by equation. Okay. So getting into the center calculation, your earth line core has the liquid formation lines of center and traction. Right? So indirect calculation interference of 1, 2, 3, and 4 communication of cores and direction. Calculation lines. Split the anomalies line settings in position above and center calculation lines and below and set position of its calculation. Okay. Now, indirect line calculation setting in travels. 1, 2, 3, 4 and set locations. Cross line stream. 1, 2, 3, 4 and set locations. Okay. Now, mechanism high force. We change the green line cycles, dimension lines of scales, indirect signal location system in connections. Right. Position of the point centers. Graph calculation screen lines, graph calculation lines of point centers, and graph communications 4 over lines of 3 track locations. Now, direct line calculation lines. This is where the tester comes into a new channel, new stream, and security measures, box line rotation surface, and triangulation reset position program in this application. Direct calculation of point lines and 3 tracks. Okay, in position. Okay, directing lines of communication settings and programs in all set location. Okay, very complicated. Setting line security. Okay. All right. So in position, we go through the block line centers. Sets lines of graph calculation of 4 settings. Sets lines of 3 and set locations. All right. So we go into communication line interference. We go into coloration. We have to go through black and white line screens and direct signal. This modification line interference and position towers of communication setting and traction. Okay. Oh. All right. So 2000 line signature stream settings, high positions calculation stream. Okay. Direct calculation line interference, done by equation. Okay. So center calculation line and tester comes into a black line surface. Bold and 3 triangulation and reset position programs. Okay. In line rotation and T reception lines with 2 lacing lines of communication. Okay. Slides across line in center calculation. Okay. Direct calculation of platforms in position 2, 3, 4, and 5 set locations. Okay. Calculation of lines, 1 panel, 4 line settings of stream. Direct line communication of point centers of traction. Security lines of measures, point lines of track. Okay. Energetic wall patterns. Now, getting into that line communication line interference comes into platforms of A, lines of C in position of C, lines of D, E, and F, and G, and set location. Okay. Sets high calculation centered perimeters. Now this is where you go into all calculation lines of blue line cycles in a dimensional scale in position locations. Open up more door centers and travel calculation, point systems calculation. Very complicated stuff. Done by equation. See? Boom, boom, boom. Again. So just confirmation coming in the center. So we go back and track line settings, high position calculation. Again, solar screens. Very powerful set line conditions. Changing lines, we go into the pink line centers. Now this programs the line setting line rotation surface and position of base recognition. Oh, look at that, disappeared. See, goes too fast in set position. You got to see through calculation. Okay, so you add the equation line screens, sets lines of base recognition. Done by equation. Okay, so that's all it is. Platitude line interference, 114 lines of phase directed time lines and position locations. That's seconds on meter, okay, depending on where your triangulation line centers. So you're always in different lines of communication of cells. Your cells are modification, triangulation, position, molecules, structural location of fractals, getting you guys back into your fields of yourself in one track line connections, of cloud line divisions, and surface location sending in position calculation. 2 track line connections, right? 3 lines of provision and cloud line change. All right, so with cloud line stream interference of the moon, calculation line interference and position location of the sun. Modification line centers, travel calculating the highest centers, point line position, travel calculations. Point lines of track. XT then comes out of the cloud and line rotation surface. Calculation line interference, cloud comes out and line position location left line cycle. Direct communication line centers of box line rotations, and travel set lines of communication setting position programs. That make equation. Okay, so the metric meters communication computer frame to positional levels lines is now in sequence. Box line rotation surface, in calculation high position of point centers, graph calculation line centers, crossing line center symbols, and shapes communication anomalies and set location. All right, graphical calculation streamlines, triangulation, and position location triangulation. Okay, so becoming a triangulation line connections. Okay, point lines of track and point line centers. Direct communication of point line centers, high position calculation, right? So bracket communication lines, direct lines of center communication, right? Now, in that line calculation, platform communication of 3 lines and position location of 4 track line connections in position of its operation. So 4 lines of division, 3 line tracks equals lines of test direct and set location. Double equation. It's all set up. Now we got the platforms in line position of 3, 4, and 5 stations. Okay. Surface and 3 triangulation reset position programs and 5 set locations. Okay, so we got the platform line setting. This opens up more plausible calculation of space lines of room and direct state locations of panels of calculation. 3 center communications to sending the travels, right? Point direct signals, modification centers, and position location of center. So getting in that position travel lines points as track locations. Getting in that direct signals put you back into center and position travel and set locations, all right? Center communication is operations. We go through the green centers. Now the green communication lines have dimension line scales, sets lines of perimeters and parameters, new line communication stream, interline communication of green lines, and center calculated lines of its core and direct signal. But we only go through the top line rotation surface and 3 triangulation high position location of the ground setting to its operation surface. This repositions modification line cycles and center calculation of 3 lines, 4 and 5 in provision as cyclic communications. Okay, that my equation. See, you always get into confirmation settings and travel. Okay, so in that position of travel lines, we come back in this line to phase direction of time. Puts levels of platforms in direct signal. So getting lines of communication, you're seeing it through frame, right? So it's detecting high position of travel calculations. Point lines of track in phase recognition of time. Okay, so it's all set up through an equation. So we're in position location of 43 lines, 30 line settings and travel. Okay, take you guys out of the equation. Done. You're back in setting. All right, so mechanism high force, triangulation, reset, position of programs, and 4 settings of 3 track line connections, all levels of weight and cycles. Set position location line system, platform communications. Now it gets tricky because the platform communication line setting into your cell modification stream interference is coming to triangulation of molecules, structures, designs of 3 set location at setting. Okay, set lines of platforms and 3 set locations. Okay, that's my equation. So we have the 3 lines of 4. Sets 3, 3, 3. Heart, mind, and soul. Body communication lines equals lines of consciousness over the mind. Line center position travel. Paths covered high position back in center. Triangulation line rotation surface. Sets position locations, all levels of perimeters, and line center location system and track calculations. All right, directing lines communication. Crosses line streams. 2 panels, umbrellas of 3 lines, and position of center calculation, center position of Earth and set location. That's my equation. So how's everybody doing so far? A lot going on, right? You're getting confirmation from solar flares, right? Because it's the backline signal in track location high settings. It's operation surface and triangulation. Point systems of track line. Okay, all sublocations, all right? So we're done. Confirmation signals and sublocations. So it's very powerful what we just finished doing. Okay, get a true understanding how this is all set up through your provision cycles, your new test record, your new design. Compute assist line interference into new gravel and business location and setting. Metric meters, scales, business travel, the balance communication, yin and yang. This process, your test direct line communication stream interference into balance communication with clock line centers of future adaptation lines and the existence of the now set locations. Okay? See you guys in 5. Adios.